Hello again, food enthusiasts. My name is Chris Rachkowski, your host today for the FutureFoodCast, where we talk with thought leaders in today's food industry and discuss the trends and technology that will shape the future of food. Very happy today to be speaking with Philippe Poirier, the CEO of Wilder Harrier. Welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you and I have had a good chance to speak before, and I learned a little bit about your history, and you have a really interesting and different history than one might expect for somebody running a company like yours now. Maybe tell us a little bit about what you were doing before Wilder and kind of what brought you up to getting this company started.
I went to business school, specialized in finance, market finance specifically. And so I started, trading stocks and working in wealth management. And that was an interest of mine back then. Certainly not a passion, but something I was interested in as a 19, 20-year-old, say. After a few years, it got kind of repetitive and I was looking at other areas of finance. That brought me into corporate finance, specifically mergers and acquisitions. So I was more on the business side of things, helping entrepreneurs, collect the fruit of their labor, so sell their business and retire, or other larger organizations divest certain portions of their business or acquire a competitor, enter a new market, etc. And that got me very interested in business and even more interested in kind of jumping over the fence and going on the other side of things, where to become an entrepreneur myself. And I felt like I had that fire within me, and it really lightened it up when I was working in that industry. And so on the side, part-time, while working at the investment bank, started working on business ideas, and they were all in the food space because that was really my true passion, something that I was clear I wanted to spend my time on. And even more specifically, I wanted to address, have a purpose-led business. So wanted to address challenges in the food system that I felt were not being addressed by large incumbents. I was just brainstorming a bunch of ideas, and it finally led me to this one, which was alternative protein specifically, and we can talk more about that if you will.
It's an interesting background, and I've had a lot of opportunity to be speaking with many different entrepreneurs in the food space, really some visionary people like yourself. And it's always interesting. You see a lot of people that have a first, second, or third career, and they finally submit to their passion, one, to be an entrepreneur if they weren't already, but then two, in the food space. And with that, you're bringing a ton really important business skills, obviously, into this space. So that's great. Now, you have a super interesting business. And like you said, you had a passion for alternative proteins, sustainability, et cetera. But tell us what actually Wilder does, and what are the products, and then what caused you to choose that particular sector for your company?
Yeah, so we're a pet food company. We're not the typical pet food company. So what we try to do is bring alternatives to the market that are both sustainable, which is a very loaded word. So what we try to do is definitely reduce the environmental footprint of current products or the market, that are also good for the pets. So we try to optimize health, digestion, and things like that of our animals. So it's very important for us to do absolutely no compromise on either, not even the environment. I think we look at it on a much larger scale, which is our social purpose. So, we look at how we treat our employees, we look at how we treat our partners, our suppliers, so their value chain, their processes. As a framework for this, we use corporation certification, which is something that always been a long-term milestone for us, and we're actually very advanced right now in the process of obtaining it, so we're super proud of it. But that's something that is shaping kind of our business decisions and trying to balance profit and purpose, which is kind of their big tagline, and it's really how we try to do business. So that's how we approach the pet food industry, and specifically for our products, we use alternative proteins to do just that. So we kind of explore the world to find proteins that are a little less known, and that can bring a huge package of nutritional benefits to the animal and to humans in most cases, and at the same time require orders of magnitude less resources than beef or chicken or even fish. So that's how we started. We started specifically with insect protein, so cricket protein in dog treats. And then slowly over time, that was about 6 years ago. And since then, we've expanded our portfolio to also include seaweed biscuits, which also include like a repurposing of leftover pulp from a juice manufacturer. So working in upcycling to also reduce food waste. We've developed also dog food, so the complete daily dog food formula that uses another insect protein, but also we started tackling invasive species, so issues of species that were inadvertently introduced in an ecosystem by humans and don't have any natural predators and are kind of debalancing the whole ecosystem there. So a big example in North America is the Asian carp, which is a larger title for a few different species of carp. The one we use is silver carp, and the silver carp, that's a long story, but yeah, basically they escaped fish tanks in the 70s after a huge flood and are now kind of debalancing North American river systems because they don't have predators, they grow enormously large, they reproduce very fast, and they're voracious. So there's no food left for the native fish. So it's our portfolio or our purpose is pretty large. We started with insect protein. Now it's much larger than that to include upcycling and invasive species, for example, but also local economy, etc. And why we started with all that is, well, the inspiration came from a report by the United Nations in 2013 that basically asked themselves, how can we feed a growing population that will soon reach 50 billion people? And so the best solution that they arrived at was insect protein. And that really was the spark of a whole market, a whole industry. There are a lot of suppliers right now that kind of started popping up around the world and raising important investments, developing infrastructure, and supplying the protein in large quantities, enough for brands like us to work profitably. And we decided to start with our animals as well, because when we started doing our kind of surveys early on in 2014, um, in Western countries, we're not necessarily ready to integrate that on a massive scale to their diet. But when we switched the narrative and we asked them, would you be interested or open to feed it to your pet, though, if you knew, that it was safe and healthy for them, and also helping the cause of our planet, and the results almost perfectly switched. So it was about 20% only that were interested to eat it themselves, but about 80% that were open to feeding it to their pets. So that's how the business got started in that direction.
Yeah, I find this, as a fellow entrepreneur in my history, a really interesting approach to the business. A lot of people have I would say, the passion for a particular product that drives them to do it,
Yeah.
whatever the business is. But it's really interesting to see you followed a very analytical process, I think, of saying you had a passion for a sustainable change in
Exactly.
protein. And instead of saying, well, we're going to convince humans to eat this, it's like, well, let's take a lower entry barrier sort of market segment, if you will, and
Yeah.
go after that. And I think it's a very innovative and smart way to get people comfortable with a product and with their pets, and dogs in this case, very, very happy and comfortable and healthy eating the product. It is probably a good sort of stealth approach to getting us Westerners who aren't quite as familiar with eating insects kind of up that curve and understanding that can be a good thing.
Exactly. And I forget who said that, but we had heard in the early days of our business, from some podcast or book, don't fall in love with your solution, fall in love with the problem. And in that way, you won't be closed off to only, one way of solving your problem. You'll just be focusing on how best to solve it and continuously reinventing yourself. And that's basically what we try to do. So we didn't fall in love with the solution of cricket protein dog treats. We fell in love with the problem of helping to build a sustainable food system through our pets, and that allows us to explore almost infinitely.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, maybe a little bit of a side topic, but an important one from the market point of view. Do you have any, through surveys or just knowing your customers, do you have any feeling for, are the customers of your product, as the human customers, are they maybe tending more in the direction of being accepting of alternate proteins?
For sure. So definitely not the majority of them, because we can definitely see that it's still the case today. Although there's been tremendous growth on the side of human insect protein, for example, food. Well, if we use alternative proteins at large, definitely target customer is majorly vegetarian, vegan, or is at least sensitive to reducing their intake of meat and exploring other alternative proteins. If we look at insects specifically, then on average, for sure, our customer is more open-minded to trying it, or has tried it, even make some partnerships with insect protein, other insect-based snacks. So we do see that we have similar customers, and there's some synergies there, absolutely.
Excellent. Well, I want to maybe start digging a little bit into how you're using technologies to, essentially get your product out there, and maybe start from the customer side and work our way back. In the human food space, the last 2 years has been very, very interesting because essentially e-commerce forced upon many people, whether they
Yeah.
wanted to buy food online or not, it became convenient and necessary in many cases. I'm curious, for your product, what are the challenges or sort of the benefits you're seeing in using e-commerce as a sort of a vector to get to your customers?
Yeah. So since the beginning, we saw our business as omni-channel. We opened our e-commerce store at the same time as launching in physical retail stores since day one. But at that time, it takes a lot longer to build interesting traction on e-commerce, or at least large sums of marketing investments. So when our first year was probably about 95% retail and 5% online e-commerce. But as you mentioned, the latest crisis immediately basically catapulted our e-commerce revenue by about 5x. We expected it to kind of come back down as people went back to their old habits. That never happened, and we've since doubled. So it's been very good for our e-commerce business. I think in general, also Canada was, because we're based in Montreal, Canada was pretty late to the e-commerce game if we compare to our U.S. neighbor. In terms of percentage of the market, if the numbers I've seen recently was that we were, below 10% of market share for e-commerce in general in CPG, and the US was closer to 25. And since COVID, we've kind of caught up, and we're now in the low 20s. I think one of the challenges, you were asking about challenges, in Canada, is that we cover such a large geography with a relatively small population, that costs of shipping are pretty high. So I think that's been one of the main roadblocks for e-commerce in Canada. There are ways to kind of circumvent it, and also as you grow, you're able to have economies of scale and better processes that allow you to be more competitive. So for us, we've kind of reached that point, and now it's a very interesting business for us. And we're now just expanding in the US because we have the capital for it, but also because majorly we were waiting for a change of regulations for one of our main ingredients, which is an insect protein, had to be approved by the FDA for use in dogs, and it was just approved in August. So that's a pretty big change for our business, and so we're just entering right now.
Excellent. Well, certainly one of the key challenges that we've seen on the e-commerce side, also magnified by new products that are out there, is helping customers to understand it, providing transparency of what's in the product, why should they trust it, why should they trust the founders of this company.
Yeah.
How are you kind of getting across that hurdle on the e-commerce side? We see lots of different solutions of social media and all sorts of things. What's your approach to getting customers comfortable with your product and really understanding your mission and purpose?
Yeah, that's a big challenge. So we have various ways about it. So I think we have, a few strategies that I can talk about. One of the main ones is transparency of customer feedback. So we have embedded reviews on our website, as well as on all our social apps, Google, the social media, Amazon. And this is very transparent by nature, because every user or every customer that orders a product can leave a review, and we don't delete any of them. And so if there's a 1-star review by someone who wasn't happy with their product or the service, it'll be there, and we will respond as a company. We will address it. And that keeps us honest, because, if we don't do a good job, then our customers will know, and all of our customers and prospects will know. So that's certainly, I think, one of the main tactics that we can use for that. Then there's kind of the experts' opinion that can be very useful and powerful. So I don't necessarily think that veterinarians in our industry are the key holders of opinion on nutrition, as doctors are not necessarily for humans, but they still hold some weight for our customers. So we'll approach some dermatologists, or because our products have tremendous benefits for dog allergies, for example. So dermatologists can be very well positioned to talk about our proteins, and so we'll have testimonials from them. Our products are also developed and formulated by experts in animal nutrition, so we'll put them up front. They're also developed according to the guidelines of a national organization that basically the norm in terms of animal nutrition. So putting that forward also ensures some minimum quality requirements. There's also external review journals that have reviewed our products positively, so we share that. So all that kind of gives credibility to the brand and to the quality of the products. Something else that we want to do more in the future, we've kind of started, but we're just limited in our time and resources, but it's putting our suppliers forward, putting our ingredients forward. So we do kind of list every ingredient and add an explanation of like where it comes from and what the benefits, specifically the nutritional benefits of these ingredients are. And we're very transparent in our ingredients. So you'll see that, there's much less fillers, much less, there's absolutely no antibiotics, conservatives, things like that. But so putting our suppliers forward and showing that, we work with people that are under, let's say, a few hundred kilometers from where our products are produced, and they're small scale farmers, things like that. That really speaks to customers, especially today, and speaks at the same time to the quality of the ingredients, the environmentally sustainable aspects of things. So those are kind of a lot of various ways that we do. And I think finally something I can add is we've just now incorporated QR codes to our packaging as well, so that there's an interactive aspect to the packaging on shelf that the customers can read and view and interact with a lot more information than is limited by the four sides of the bag on shelf.
Interesting. I'm going to dive into that a little bit more in a few moments, but you brought up a topic that is quite common for human foods, people being interested in buying locally, supporting local farmers, understanding that the quality of products, the raw materials coming into whatever food item they're buying. And it sounds like you're seeing the same with certainly very passionate pet owners we hear quite often, especially in the last few decades, pets are really part of the family. Sometimes they're more important than others in the family. So it's really not a surprise to me that the pet owners would be wanting to look at where that comes from. And it sounds like you're using for example, QR codes to enable some interactivity with the customers. Does that include basically giving visibility, transparency back to the suppliers, and in some way enabling sort of, if you will, dynamic social media or dynamic sort of a view through your supply chain for those customers?
We haven't incorporated that at the moment, but that is certainly the vision that we have of it exactly, and enabling real-time tracing as well of each batch. So we already have a batch number in our backlog. We can already know which ingredients were included in that batch and from which batch of our suppliers they came from. So enabling that, for example, through blockchain or just doing it manually through a technological software, certainly be something that we're interested in the short term.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from quite a number of entrepreneurs in the food space, and many of them bringing with them history of running other types of companies or being involved with other types of companies. So they have this technical mindset about what can it do for us, but they're not dev shops. You don't have necessarily a large group of developers sitting there waiting to develop the next thing. And I've heard that before, that there are people sometimes just waiting for the products to drop so that they can essentially add that in as to what they're already doing. Like, it sounds like you have a very well developed sort of ERP system for supply chain management. You can figure out exactly what's in each package of product that you sell, and enabling customers to do that in a dynamic way with your face, your partner's faces involved with the whole social media around it, I think really we're seeing that bring a lot of trust, and a word that comes up often is authenticity in products.
That's right. Yeah.
Do you feel like the concept of authenticity and sort of the ethos of yourself and your partners as founders, is that important in coming through in your marketing approach?
Yeah, it's huge, and it's something that we kind of get reminded every year that we don't do enough. So basically, when we look back at our marketing initiatives, the most efficient or successful with our customers by far is whenever there's the story of the business is shared, either our faces at an event, or we just share some what's happening in the background at the office. So we share pictures of the employees, or we share videos of the warehouse, of the packages being sent. So when customers feel like they're kind of involved in the story of the business more than just being sold the products, or even if it's not being sold, but if they're the story of the business versus all of the benefits of the products is of tremendous importance. So we're trying to be aware of that and do that proactively.
So it sounds like you're also seeing people trending toward making buying decisions based on these factors, whereas for human food products, and I think the same is true for dogs in terms of how people perceive their dogs enjoying their food, being healthy, et cetera. But two key factors are taste and cost. Basically, that takes care of almost everything, but definitely seems like there's a trend in people. Of course, those are going to be maintaining the two top decision factors, but people do seem to be significantly influencing their purchasing decisions based on, do I like this company? Certain sustainability, features that are important to me.
Yeah.
And you're seeing that coming through pretty strongly on the pet food side too, it sounds.
Yeah. And I don't want to limit or categorize people into groups, but I think the new generations are doing that even more strongly. By default, our customers tend to be more in the millennial generation, and then more and more already we see the Gen Zs becoming a strong portion of the customer population. That's what they demand.
Mm-hmm. And that's an interesting point, because I've heard the same, and I think we're all a little bit resistant to categorizing people, or at least in some parts of the world we are. But it's important from a marketing point of view, so we know who we're going after as key target customers. I'm curious, from your point of view, do you have visibility into the market makeup of your customer base in terms of age groups? Yeah. What percentage are you seeing in this, let's say, the 35 and below category?
Yeah, it's about 80% of our customers. It's the vast majority, and it's been like that since the beginning. And yeah, we do have customers from all groups of age, but that's definitely the one with whom I guess our brand and maybe even the image or the personality, or I'm not sure what it is, but resonates the most with.
Well, let's switch again a little bit to kind of the raw materials in your product. I was just thinking that it's funny for me that we're having a discussion about this really interesting protein content company that sells pet food, and insects are a key part of that, the key part of it for most of your products. I feel like 5 or 10 years ago, it would be a shocking discussion. Everybody would be very exciting in talking about this, but it seems like it's also to the point these days where it's like, yeah, that makes sense to me. Nobody's too shocked about it. Maybe people aren't ready to dive right in, but nobody seems that surprised. Is that your experience also?
Yeah, so we started commercializing our products in 2015, so already 6 years ago, and we've been doing trade shows every year and customer events as well. And the response was completely different back then than today, for sure. So back then we were informing everyone of this possibility, and the major reaction was shock, and some disgust, or a lot of incomprehension, a lot of confusion. And today, we almost never get that. It's I think 95% of people have already been kind of exposed to the idea, and they know, and they can either decide if it's for them or if they're not ready yet. But we don't see that as much of a resistance to it. I think the main no's that we get are just lack of information as to why I would make the change rather than resistance.
I feel like, as we were talking before about transparency and authenticity and being able to show to customers that, these aren't bugs. People sometimes think about, those dirty cockroaches somewhere. This is protein source. This is insect meat, basically raised in extremely well-controlled conditions, very, very clean. To your point, there's no antibiotics in it, potentially very, very low, non sort of natural products. How much do you emphasize that sort of the source of the raw materials, the insects, and the cleanliness of those conditions? Does that kind of get also some of the people over the hurdle as well?
Yeah, and actually, my response is twofold. It's absolutely, and then no, we don't do it enough, but it's something that every year we're just kind of improving our marketing strategy. And the big takeaway this year was we don't educate our customers enough about the safety of our proteins, and so we start going into all kinds of marketing directions. But the bottom line is people have to be comforted about the safety and the nutritional aspect of these proteins to really understand why they would feed it to their dogs. It's not just to save the planet. We talk a lot about environment, and so it can seem like compromise for them as a dog owner to, if I want to reduce my environmental footprint, I have to switch to this protein, but it comes with cons. Truly, there's absolutely no drawback. So yeah, it's something that we often get the question, how do you catch them? And so clearly there's something that's not being communicated.
Right. Another sort of channel for your protein is something I find to be a really amazing approach to sustainability, which is the invasive species that you're working with, the Asian carp, which I think, as you described, is actually a variety of species of carp, but that are, at least in North America, let's say, not original inhabitants and causing some trouble in ecosystems. And there's a whole bunch of things to talk about on this topic, but I can see tremendous interest from customers on this because, one, well, it's a quote normal protein. People are excited about that, but they can actually feel good about doing something for the environment also. It's not, some horrible fish farm somewhere that is, essentially torturing animals to get them into a can of food for your dog. How do you communicate that benefit to your customers, that one, you're reducing environmental problems by using this product, but two, that, where is it coming from? How do I feel comfortable that it's not coming out of some polluted canal behind a chemical factory?
Yeah, so far we've, because of COVID, also mainly we haven't been able to go to the source in Illinois to film and showcase these fishermen that are in the Illinois basin and fishing very passively as well. It's a very environmentally responsible fishing method, which basically includes large fishing nets with large holes, because the Asian carp is quite big, and they just leave the nets overnight in the water, and native fish are able to swim through the holes, and the carps stay cut in it, and there's no raking the water floor. And so we want to be able to, so we talk about all this, so how do we do it right now? Through stories, through video, through animation, on the back of our packaging, through various posts, in PR, but we haven't been able to show visually what it entails. We also have interviews with our supplier, things like that. So we try to do it as best as we can, but what we really want to do is be able to go on location and share how it is truly with our customers, because really we're very proud of it. Anyone who has seen Seaspiracy and any other documentary about this cause, but Seaspiracy did it in a very profound way, is that basically there's no good alternative to fish and seafood. It seems like wherever you go, whether it's wild caught, whether it's farmed, whether it's fish or shellfish, everything has very massive impacts on our environment and on our planet, or on socially as well in some cases. Right. But the silver carp or the Asian carp seems to just be the only alternative that makes sense, because it needs to be fished out. And it's either we fish it out and waste the meat, or we fish it out and are able to give it a commercial value and actually even a nutritional value.
Yeah, that I could see a huge increase in demand just from people literally wanting to buy the product. Of course, it has to be good and healthy for the animal, but it's like, and again, the demographic that you're hitting, these are people that want to do something good, proactively do something that's helping sustainability. I can see people buying it just because they're improving an environmental situation somewhere. And to your point, they just need to be able to understand that, very clearly and transparently.
Yeah, education is a big piece of our business and of our marketing for sure.
So I'm curious, I think quite a lot of your product, if not all of it, is aimed at dogs. And I think there are some additional challenges in making food for cats, especially with insects. Although in my reading there, I can see that's going to happen, but it's taking a bit more time with some perceptions that cats have different, very critical nutritional profiles that need to be managed. But you have a really interesting supply chain for a type of protein that cats are pretty well proven to do well on, which are fish. I am curious, do you see your company expanding into cat food?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that it's the question that we get the most since the founding of our business. So I think our customers are very eager. The ones who have both dogs and cats are very eager to also feed Wilder Harrier to their cats. And the ones who don't have dogs, they're just eager to be able to purchase our products. It's kind of two ways. So the product development itself is kind of a little more complicated because, as you said, so cats are much more carnivore than dogs. So dogs are omnivore; they can survive or thrive on a varied diet, where cats need a much higher amount of protein and fat. Our proteins are much more expensive than traditional meat proteins, much more so. And partly because the industry is still very young and hasn't achieved the economies of scale that the meat industry has. Maybe not for the best, but anyway, meat should probably be a lot more expensive. But so the product development is a bit more expensive. On the other side, it's just also as entrepreneurs of a small business with limited resources, both financially and human. We can't kind of go after every goose egg or opportunity that we're interested in because we would be all over the place. And it's something that we've been doing constantly since the founding of the business, something that we are constantly learning to focus. And so, if it was just our personal preference, we would already have cat products, but unfortunately we need to make sure that it makes sense for the business as well. So I think they're a few years away, but as soon as possible.
I'm curious, as an aside, and maybe something you don't know about, these carp species are a problem because somebody at some point thought it would be a great idea to farm them, I'm guessing.
They were used to clean the tanks, actually.
Okay. At the same time, they have proven themselves to be quite capable of surviving in ecosystems and growing tremendously, and they're actually a great product. Do you foresee them being able to be farmed in an environmentally sustainable way, or do you think that is not a direction that at least North America would go?
That's a tough question because I think, I don't know if Wilder Harrier would go in that direction to use farmed fish with everything that we know of the quality of life of the animal, the pollution that it creates, the quality of the feed usually, and things like that. So I think right now we're happy with solving the problem in the wild, and whenever that gets solved, then we'll have done our job and we'll move on to a different alternative species.
Well, that certainly resonates with me. Same personal or similar personal views on that. You mentioned an interesting comment before that, in the insect protein area, is rather expensive sort of raw material. This is true, I think, in any new quote technology that comes out. When it's first introduced into the market, there's certain types of consumers that buy it. They pay a premium for it because it satisfies their personal interests. And if and as the demand grows, costs go down. And by the way, of course, it's not only for pets, but it will be also for humans as well. In terms of a raw material, what do you see coming over the next 10 years in terms of, maybe we think about it as the percentage growth in production in North America of insect proteins? Do you see it sort of doing the usual hockey stick type of thing that we expect in tech companies, shall we say? Or do you see a more moderate growth ahead, which would indicate, it may still be a somewhat pricey protein source?
No, yeah, I think so. There's some obvious improvements that can be done, for example, in terms of automation. So just automating the processes will cut costs pretty importantly, and then size, of course. So I think the best estimates that I've seen in terms of market research show an annual growth of between, let's say, 30 and 50% annually. So that is not necessarily quite hockey stick, but it brings us to a market of several $billion in North America only within a few years. So that would still be very interesting for us. And yeah, I think insect protein is not the only solution to bring sustainability to our food system, but I think it will be part of it. It will be an important part of it.
Excellent. So what do we see in the next 2 or 3 years for Wilder Harrier? What kind of new products might we expect from you? What kind of geographic reach are you intending to have? I'm curious to hear about that.
Yeah. Well, we have so many projects. So let's say, over the next decade, where we see ourselves. So we've started exporting. We're now selling our products in Korea. As I was mentioning, we're entering the United States slowly. So I think over the next decade, we'd love to expand in Europe as well, and the rest of Asia. So that's something that has already kind of been started in the works. And in terms of products, cats is the logical next customer. But in terms of types of products, we now have a dry kibble because this is something that most of our customers need and want. But we think the market is moving towards fresh food for pets, and it's also something that we think makes a lot of sense in terms of keeping the pet interested and also keeping the ingredients as fresh as possible. So we're working on that, and also working on probably a line of toys and accessories that would be made with plastic recycled from oceans or any other wasted plastic.
So the theme is consistent all the way through in sustainability and utilizing resources that can be reused that might have been waste in other situations.
Yeah, our purpose is very strong, so I don't think we're going to move away from that anytime soon.
Excellent. Well, really appreciate you being with us here today, Philippe. Wilder Harrier is a tremendously interesting company. And again, I'm personally very impressed that it started with an ethos and a mission for sustainability in the approach you had with proteins, and really was a decision on, let's go after this market sector because, one, it's a cool market sector, but it's a way of getting this product into society and sort of building momentum there. So it's excellent strategy and approach. Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. Super appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to having you on again, and great success with your products, and looking forward to using it myself.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to FutureFoodCast. FutureFoodCast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.